You were born into a world where freedom was the anthem, where free will was sacred, where your thoughts were supposed to be yours. But what if I told you that wasn't true? What if I told you your mind has always been a battlefield, a test subject, a target, not just by media, not just by corporations, but by your own government? This isn't theory. This isn't paranoia. This is documented fact. Let's go back to the beginning. The Cold War. 1950s America. A country drunk on fear and patriotism. Anxious, paranoid, determined to win at all costs. And under the surface, a new kind of war had begun. A war for control of the human mind. The CIA believed the Soviets and Chinese had already unlocked something dark. The ability to brainwash. Prisoners of war were returning from Korea with changed beliefs. American soldiers, now praising communism. Broken. Reprogrammed. The CIA's conclusion: they're ahead of us. So the question wasn't, should we learn how to control the mind? It was, how far are we willing to go to get there first? That question birthed a project. Hidden. Classified. Erased and denied for decades. MKUltra. A code name. A cover story. A door into the darkest corners of science, psychology, and ethics. Its goal was simple: master control over human consciousness. To erase memory, implant beliefs, induce obedience, trigger confession, program loyalty. And to do that, they broke every rule of humanity. Let's talk about the man behind the curtain, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb. A chemist, soft-spoken, moral in public, monstrous in private. He believed the mind could be wiped and rewritten, not through conversation, not through persuasion, but through trauma, drugs, isolation, terror. He authorized experiments on unwitting subjects, people who were drugged without consent, imprisoned in sensory deprivation tanks, shocked with electricity, hypnotized until they collapsed, tortured under the name of science. They called it research, but it was destruction. And what they left behind was not data. It was broken people, missing time, suicides, lobotomies, lives erased from history. Let's talk about Subproject 68, run by Dr. Ewan Cameron in Canada, a man once respected in psychiatry, funded directly by the CIA. He believed he could rebuild minds, that the sick could be cured by starting from zero. So he tried to erase identity. Literally. He used massive doses of LSD, drug-induced comas lasting up to 88 days, high-voltage electroshock far beyond accepted levels, looped audio messages played for 20 hours a day. Patients came in for anxiety, for postpartum depression, for minor marital stress. They left unable to speak, unable to recognize family, unable to function. And many never knew they were part of an experiment, because no one told them. Let that sink in. This was done in hospitals, with government money, in total secrecy. Let's pause. Still think your mind is your own? Or are you starting to see it's been a target all along? You think you would have known if they were experimenting on you, if someone was trying to change your thoughts. But what if they didn't need your permission? What if they didn't even need your awareness? What if you could be a test subject without ever knowing? Let's talk about Operation Midnight Climax. The name sounds like satire. It's not. In the 1950s and 60s, the CIA set up hidden safe houses in San Francisco and New York. They were furnished to look like brothels, complete with red lights, mirrors, and beds. But behind those mirrors were CIA operatives, recording everything. They hired sex workers to lure men off the street. Once inside, the men were unknowingly dosed with LSD, then observed for hours, sometimes days. Why? to study how drugs affected behavior, to test if people could be manipulated sexually, to see if a person could be controlled without knowing. No consent, no rules, no mercy. These were not criminals. These were ordinary citizens. Some of them never recovered. Some never even knew it happened. Let's talk about Frank Olson, a biochemist working on secret military projects. In 1953, he was dosed with LSD by his colleagues without his knowledge. Soon after, he became erratic, paranoid, terrified. He told his wife he was being watched. He wanted to quit the program. He said he'd seen things he couldn't live with. A few days later, he fell from a hotel window. The CIA said it was suicide. But 20 years later, documents surfaced proving he had been drugged. His family pushed for answers. They exhumed his body. The coroner found injuries inconsistent with a fall. Now the question isn't, did he jump? It's, was he silenced? Let's talk about the victims no one names. MK used. Mental health patients. Prisoners. Military personnel. Sex workers. The homeless. College students. People on the margins. People unlikely to be believed. People whose stories could be erased. And they were. Let's talk about the prisons. In one experiment, inmates at the Lexington Narcotics Hospital were offered drugs as rewards for participation. Heroin addicts were promised a fix. In exchange for unknowingly taking LSD, or being placed in solitary confinement for days, or being injected with paralytics, left conscious but unable to move. In some cases, prisoners were told they were being treated. They weren't. They were being programmed. Let's talk about the college campuses. MK Ultra infiltrated over 80 institutions, universities, hospitals, clinics. Many professors accepted CIA funding without knowing the real purpose. At Stanford, Harvard, Yale students were dosed, studied, manipulated. One such student? Ted Kaczynski. Yes, the Unabomber. Long before his manifesto. Before the bombs. He was part of a Harvard experiment on stress under interrogation, run by a professor tied to CIA contracts. He was 17 years old. He was humiliated, deconstructed, filmed, mocked. He never recovered. You don't have to excuse what he did to wonder what was done to him. Let's talk about mind control through media. MK Ultra wasn't just about drugs. It was about influence. They studied subliminal messaging, hypnosis, isolation, forced repetition, sensory overload, all designed to weaken resistance and open the brain to suggestion. Some of these techniques were later mirrored in advertising, in political propaganda, in cult recruitment. But they started here, in a lab, with funding, with files, with people screaming behind soundproof walls. Let's talk about erased records. In 1973, as the Watergate scandal unfolded, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all MK Ultra documents destroyed. Tons of paper. Gone overnight. Why? Because the truth was too dangerous. Not to the enemy, but to you. Only a small batch of files survived accidentally. Misfiled in a budget archive. Discovered years later. That's why we know anything. Now imagine what we don't know. Let's pause. Still think this was just old history? Still think it couldn't happen again? Because the techniques survived. The files may be gone, but the methods weren't forgotten. They just evolved. And now? Now they live in places you can't see. MK Ultra was never truly about science. It wasn't about healing. It wasn't even about truth. It was about control. And when the files were burned, the knowledge didn't disappear. It spread. It bled into psychology, advertising, technology, politics, entertainment. The lab coat was swapped for a suit, the hidden camera for a smartphone, the LSD for algorithms. And you? You became the perfect subject. Let's talk about behavioral engineering. In the aftermath of MKUltra, researchers began to study predictive behavior models. They learned that emotion overrides reason, that people are more likely to comply under stress, that fear makes people obedient, that repetition forms belief, that identity is more powerful than facts. This became the foundation of modern marketing psychology and eventually of algorithmic design. Let's talk about attention as a weapon. Your attention is the most valuable commodity in the world. Because where your attention goes, your decisions follow. So now, every platform, every app, every notification is designed to trigger you with rage, with lust, with fear, with tribal loyalty, with panic. Why? Because panic keeps you scrolling. You're not reading, you're being trained. Let's talk about echo chambers. MKUltra wanted to erase resistance. Modern tech does it differently. It isolates you with content you already agree with, until contradiction feels like violence, until your beliefs become your identity. And any threat to those beliefs feels like death. Now you're loyal, predictable, controllable, not because you were forced, but because you were nudged. Let's talk about deep learning manipulation. Data isn't just collected, it's fed into models. They know when you're lonely, what time you're most vulnerable, what type of face you trust, what words make you click, what color makes you buy, what video makes you vote. And with that data, they don't need to change your mind. They just feed you a slightly different version of your own, until you think it was your idea all along. Let's talk about mass suggestion. Think about political campaigns, viral challenges, meme wars, social justice slogans, manufactured outrage. These aren't accidents. They are engineered trends, often started by small groups, amplified by bots, distributed by influencers, normalized by news, swallowed by you. By the time you decide to care, the script was already written. You're reacting to a narrative, not a reality. Let's talk about synthetic memory. Your phone feeds you memories. On this day 3 years ago, your apps tell you what to remember, what to forget, what to feel. And when enough people remember the same false thing, it becomes history. Let's talk about perception control. You don't see the world. You see a filtered version of it. Your social media feed is a personalized illusion, a psychological simulation, tailored to trigger you, calm you, mobilize you, or pacify you. You're not informed. You're managed. Let's talk about dream manipulation. No, not metaphoric. Studies now explore how sound, light, and suggestion can influence dream content during sleep. A 2021 paper described early experiments using commercials embedded in dreams. MKUltra tried to implant ideas in the waking mind. Now we're testing it in sleep. Let's talk about voice synthesis and deepfakes. If MKUltra wanted to control what you believed, now we can literally fake a person. Fake audio, fake videos, fake quotes, fake experts. And the scariest part? Your brain can't tell the difference. It believes what feels real, not what is real. Let's pause. This isn't science fiction. This is now. You are not chained to a lab table. You are chained to your habits, your beliefs, your identity, your screen. The methods of MKUltra evolved. They became less violent and more beautiful. That's the trap. You don't resist them because you don't know they're there. You thought it was over. That MKUltra was a dark chapter. Closed, condemned, buried. But what if it was never meant to end? What if it was only meant to evolve? From physical coercion to psychological suggestion, from laboratories to living rooms, from needles and drugs to pixels and code. Let's talk about where we're going and why it should terrify you. Let's talk about neurotechnology. Right now, scientists are developing brain-computer interfaces, chips, implants, wearable EEG headbands, devices that read brainwaves and respond in real time. What begins as a tool for accessibility becomes a tool for control. Imagine ads that change based on your brain activity, entertainment that adapts to your emotions, AI that knows when you're lying before you speak, governments that track political thought crimes, corporations that reward approved brain states. It sounds impossible, but the tech already exists. What's missing is ethics, and those were never a priority. Let's talk about neuromarketing. Companies already scan your brain while you watch trailers. They track pupil dilation, heart rate, sweat. They find the exact frame that makes you desire, fear, comply. Now imagine that precision scaled up across billions of users. The same way social media trained you to swipe, they can train you to buy, to agree, to obey, without you even knowing. Let's talk about predictive emotion AI. Programs now read micro-expressions, tone shifts, breathing, and soon they'll be able to tell in real time how you're feeling, what scares you, what excites you, what arouses you, what calms you. And every company will use that data to nudge you, to guide you, to sculpt you. Let's talk about digital twins. Governments and corporations are building simulations, digital replicas of real people, populated with your data. These models can predict behavior, vote outcomes, social responses. They can simulate how a population will react to a law, how a city will respond to crisis, how you will respond to propaganda. And based on that, they'll adjust reality to match the reaction they want. Let's talk about surveillance capitalism as evolution. In MK Ultra, subjects were watched in hidden rooms. Now you volunteer. You sign the terms. You carry the camera. You speak to the microphone. Your location, your face, your voice, your biometrics, all sold, shared, fed to systems bigger than you can imagine. They don't need to experiment anymore. You're already training the machine. Let's talk about compliance engineering. We used to think brainwashing meant torture. Now we know. It just means consistency. Repeat the message. Isolate the subject. Reward obedience. Punish dissent. Control the context. We call this influence, brand alignment, behavioral optimization, community guidelines. But it's the same script, just digitally upgraded. Let's talk about identity weaponization. MK Ultra tried to fragment identity. Now platforms exploit it. You're constantly nudged to label yourself, left or right, victim or villain, ally or enemy, trend or threat. The more rigid your identity becomes, the more predictable you are. And the more predictable you are, the easier you are to control. Let's talk about consent. MK Ultra bypassed it completely. Today, you give it away. Not because you understand it, but because you're overwhelmed. Pages of unread terms, pop-ups, buzzwords, pressure. Your agreement is not informed. It's extracted. Let's talk about language erosion. Language shapes thought. Control the vocabulary. And you control the possibilities. When complexity is removed, when nuance is punished, when new speech norms are dictated from above, the population becomes linguistically shackled and psychologically tamed. Let's talk about generational programming. Children now grow up in algorithmic ecosystems. Their first teachers? Apps, feeds, voices designed to optimize attention, not truth. By the time they can think, they've already been shaped. Not for liberation, but for compliance. Let's pause. You were told you were free, but freedom without awareness is just a prettier prison. So let's ask the question, where does this go next? What happens when AI knows what you'll believe before you do? Governments punish thoughts, not actions. Influence becomes invisible yet total. Memory becomes editable. Reality becomes programmable. That's not the future. That's the now. Let's close with this. MK Ultra didn't fail. It succeeded in proving a terrible truth, that the human mind is vulnerable, flexible, hackable. And now that every tool is digital, the experiment never needs to end. So ask yourself, who do your thoughts serve? Because in a world designed to shape your mind, knowing who you are might be the only freedom left.